My spouse abandoned me for my sibling, all because a fortune teller advised her to, yet when she came back, seeing as it was all my brother's scheme, I informed her that my rising sign had instructed me to reject her. I was 35 and my wife, who was 34, and I had been married for 7 years, despite the fact that we'd been a couple for a decade. We shared plenty of interests. We both enjoyed traveling, preparing meals, and binge-watching shows. We even had comparable ambitions for our lives. The single area where we didn't fully see eye to eye was our philosophies. I've consistently been a person who values science and the rational. I'm fond of concrete data, and I've always made my choices using logic. My wife used to be the same way, at least up until 2020. As we were confined to our home, she, just like countless others, became really engrossed in astrology. It began with her spending endless hours on social media platforms, and then things spiraled. Initially, it was nothing concerning. She would read my daily forecast or pin the blame on a Mercury retrograde whenever things went south. I didn't understand it, however. Since it brought her joy, I figured it wasn't causing any harm. When the constraints were eased, her priority wasn't connecting with friends or returning to her job. Instead, she began searching for a good astrologer. I was a little taken aback, but I didn't object. I am very fond of my wife, and if astrology gave her some solace or understanding after a hard time, I was fine with it. Since I love her, I wanted to respect her beliefs, even though I believed them to be utterly absurd. I'm a pretty rational individual. Everyone has their own peculiarities. I didn't want to be dismissive or overbearing, but then it became excessive. She really began to drop tons of cash on readings of our birth charts, plus astrological cleansing rituals for our home. I honestly wasn't aware our house was even grubby. What was space dust coating everything? She also began making every single small choice depending on what the heavens advised. Looking back, I think the moment she started believing the stars were personally addressing her was the breaking point. She would check in with her astrologer about literally everything, from meals to whether we should go on a trip. She even declared that certain times of day were bad luck for important talks, so we had to put our chats on the calendar. She informed me that I was prohibited from making big decisions due to my stars being out of whack. I wasn't even aware of my star's location. She would pick fights because our zodiac signs clashed or because some planet was in retrograde. It seemed like she had a cosmic battle itinerary, and since the stars told her to start conflict, we would argue since she did what they suggested. There was even a time when she wanted us to relocate since, it seems, the vibe of our place didn't fit her rising sign or something. I wondered if her rising sign was going to cover the cost of the move. Now it makes me chuckle because time has softened things and humor allows me to deal. However, at that point, I felt like I was in some alternate dimension. Even so, I attempted to be understanding. While I disagreed with the whole situation, I stuck it out because I cared about her. I kept repeating that relationships require flexibility and concessions. I realized I had to come to terms with the fact that my significant other enjoyed different pursuits than I did. I kept wishing that some sensible celestial guidance would show her how out of line this whole astrology thing was and that she'd quit it. Then came the day when everything just crumbled. She wanted me to sit down in the living room, facing her. She told me she had something very important to share. She seemed uneasy, as if she was on the verge of tears, and that immediately made me nervous. I assumed something awful had happened to a relative or that she was unwell. For days, I'd noticed that something wasn't right. Her behavior had been odd, and whenever I'd inquired what was wrong, she would sidestep me or disregard my question. Then she began to weep and finally explained. Her astrologer had disclosed something that would alter her life. Based on the stars, I wasn't her real, ultimate companion. Instead, it was my 33-year-old brother. Apparently, the astrologer had conducted a detailed reading and found that their connection from the cosmos was much more powerful than what we shared. He also declared that our marriage was destined to fail from the beginning. She totally embraced this, convinced that our disagreements about trivial matters like whether or not she should wear red on a particular day proved that the stars had alerted her about our mismatch. Initially, I believed it was a jest or a miscommunication. But as I watched her sobbing uncontrollably, I understood that she was completely, utterly sincere. She insisted that it wasn't a decision she'd made herself, that the cosmos had chosen it for her. She kept reiterating that the universe was the driving force behind this. She'd also say stuff like, "The stars are never wrong," which I suppose is factual because they can't actually speak. I attempted to use logic with her. I told her that it was silly allowing some space rocks to determine her fate. However, she wouldn't budge. I brought up the many years we'd been a couple, the life we'd constructed together, everything we had experienced as a pair, but she remained certain. Fate had declared it so. Every effort on my part to pull her back to the present was met with more astrology-related gibberish. She claimed our marriage was a bad match and that my astrological vibe clashed too much with hers. Well, no star had given me any heads up about any of this. So just like that, she destroyed our entire lives because some fortune teller told her my sibling was her destined soulmate. Soulmate, what does that even mean? Like a character from a comic book movie. I figured that if my brother was her destined partner, she was my comedic partner, since this whole thing was totally bonkers. To add insult to injury, my brother didn't seem the least bit shocked or doubtful when she told him. Instead, he readily embraced it. That's when I just knew something was seriously off. My brother and I weren't the closest, yet for him to just be okay with my wife leaving me for him. That situation was beyond repulsive and fishy, but perhaps it somehow related to whatever celestial body had been. Well, you get the idea. The legal separation proceedings began not long after that. I'm not going to bore you with all the specifics, but it was an awful experience. We were forced to endure the mandatory 6-month waiting period before the paperwork went through, and throughout those months I had to watch my former wife and my sibling behave like they were a match made in heaven. For the year following, I poured all my energy into trying to move forward with my life. I started therapy, severed relationships with most of my relatives who barely reprimanded my brother before brushing it off, and buried myself in my job. It was difficult, but I was starting to feel better. Then, completely out of the blue, approximately a year after everything had happened, my ex-wife reached out to me. I hadn't had any contact with her since the divorce became official. She sent me a text explaining that she needed to speak with me immediately. She wondered if I could meet her in an hour. To be truthful, I really didn't want to do it, so I told her she ought to consult her star sign before anything. I didn't get a response to that. I did have some time available, but I still didn't think seeing her was a good plan. I let her know my thoughts on the matter, but she wouldn't give up. She kept insisting that she had important news to tell me. I suggested she just text me instead, but she claimed she preferred to do it face-to-face. My curiosity won, so I eventually agreed to meet her. When I finally saw her, she was a disaster. The initial thing she did was burst into tears. She confessed she had made a massive error and pleaded for me to forgive her. Initially, I was bewildered, and frankly, I wasn't eager to give her my ear. My sole purpose for being there was to receive any crucial details she felt compelled to reveal. After she offered a sincere apology, she finally disclosed the significant revelation. She had, it seemed, recently happened upon a discussion my brother was having with another individual. She heard him chuckling about how effortless it was for him to deceive her. She bided her time until he stepped away from his phone, unattended, and looked into his recent communications. It was her horoscope reader. She challenged him directly, and he divulged the complete truth. As it turned out, my brother had compensated the astrologer to persuade her that they were destined for each other. Recognizing her strong faith in astrology, he took advantage of it to separate her from me. It emerged that my brother had consistently envied me, my career, my companions, my entire existence, and this feeling had morphed into an intense fixation on my wife. He had desired her for quite some time and engineered the entire situation to acquire her. My former wife was utterly crushed. She was unable to believe she had been tricked in such a manner. Honestly, I was equally dumbfounded. Furthermore, she informed me that my brother had undergone a complete transformation after they started their life together. He had, it appeared, become domineering, mean-spirited, and even psychologically hurtful. Currently, she was extremely eager to rekindle our relationship. She stated she now understood how mistaken she'd been and how significant her loss had been. She confessed that she only came to appreciate the quality of our partnership once she abandoned me for my loathsome brother. She expressed that she was overcome with remorse for wrecking our marriage based on a fabrication. She mentioned that she had left my brother after she found out the facts. Now she wanted to try and repair our relationship. She pleaded with me to forgive her, claiming she'd been misled by it all but still cared for me. I'm completely lost on where to even begin. Part of me is so incredibly angry, furious that she believed all this garbage, furious that my brother orchestrated the whole thing, but then again, my brother is a total waste of space, and frankly, that's all I need to know. My former wife isn't any better either. Beyond her belief in things like stars, planets, horoscopes, and who knows, maybe even fairy tales, she seriously believes I would take her back now. I told her I needed some time to consider everything, but honestly, the only thing going through my head is how to deliver my brother a few stars right to the face. Clearly, I'm not getting back with her. However, at that instant, the only thing I could feel was my anger towards my brother. Update 1. I've been getting a lot of encouraging messages. Even though this whole situation wasn't exactly a happy occasion, at least people are handling it with some humor. I've also gotten several comments that I shouldn't take my wife back, and that's exactly what I already stated I wouldn't do, and I won't. It's the truth that we argued a lot during our marriage, and it was her fault. If Uranus said we were going to fight that day, she would find a way to make it happen. Even if my brother wasn't involved, going back to her would still be absurd. I tolerated so much because I adored her, and I believed it was just a passing thing, like a fleeting moment, but it wasn't. It turned into something completely out of control. Plus, she actually left me for my own sibling, something I can't ever see myself getting over. A lot of people commented about the relationship I had with my brother, so I guess I'll tell the story. As I said earlier, it wasn't your average brotherly relationship. It was actually quite bizarre. It wasn't a competition since we were interested in different things. For instance, I was really into sports. Once before a game, he put something in my beverage. To my mom and dad, that small mishap, as they called it, was because he couldn't deal with not being great at sports. They always favored him, so they simply grounded him for a little bit, and after that, it was like nothing had happened and everything went back to normal. Thinking about it now, it's not really shocking he did this awful thing with my former wife. He's always been envious. So when he saw something that I had that he desired, he just went for it. He's truly disturbed, and it's about time somebody got through to him. Also, I want to clarify my stance on astrology. I don't completely dismiss it. I mean, it can be fun, right? Isn't that the whole intention? I've looked at horoscopes before, but I never took them seriously. As far as I'm concerned, it's merely amusement, not something that should run your life. The issue wasn't my ex-wife's interest in astrology. I didn't care about that. The issue began when she allowed this cosmic connection to control her choices, like leaving me for my own brother. That's when things truly went south. When a supposed connection to the cosmos outweighed something as practical as a reliable internet connection, it was too much. I felt off kilter since my former wife revealed everything. I thought I'd come to terms with everything already. For me, it had become a past experience I could laugh about. But now discovering what my brother did, it's like the rage inside me has become exponentially worse. Plus, my ex-wife hasn't stopped trying to get me back. Somehow she discovered my new residence. I have no clue how she found it, and she's been showering me with presents constantly. It's really awkward. Truthfully, it just makes me feel very uneasy. At least she's refrained from sending me a horoscope. Now, for the biggest news, my brother tried to reach out to me. Remember, this guy hadn't spoken to me in ages, and he had the nerve to call only asterisk after manipulating my ex-wife into dumping me. Throughout the whole chat, he behaved like he was totally blameless. He insisted my ex-wife was fibbing and that there was some giant misunderstanding about the astrologer. He insisted he never paid anyone and that the astrologer honestly believed they were destined for each other. Sure, whatever, I didn't buy a single thing he said. And even if it was true, the fact that he accepted her still makes him as guilty in my book. However, I've known my brother since childhood. I can spot a lie from a mile away with him. He's always been skilled at reinterpreting the facts to make himself appear innocent. This situation felt just like all the others. He kept trying to make excuses for his actions, claiming it wasn't his fault if fate meant for us to be together. He even had the gall to say that if I had been a better husband, maybe she wouldn't have started believing in astrology in the first place. It was smart of him to call me instead of showing up face to face. He wouldn't have the guts. It's difficult enough already handling my ex-wife trying to get back with me, but I definitely don't need my brother making things even worse. Not if he's too chicken to come to my house and give me a legitimate reason to beat him up until he resembles a star. Right now, I really don't know what I'm going to do because I can't just go and physically assault them. I'd end up in jail. All I can do is wish and beg the heavens that he comes to my place and throws the first punch. That's all I desire. I'm praying that the god Uranus sees Reddit and fulfills my desire because I swear I will absolutely destroy my brother. Regarding my ex-wife, I already have the perfect comeback ready for her. I'll share it with you all when we inevitably cross paths again. Update 2. I didn't anticipate running into them again so soon, but here I am. Since my last post, I couldn't stop obsessing about the astrologer. I mean, he deceived my wife for financial gain. Well, they're all liars, aren't they? But at least in most situations, they aren't actively trying to destroy a person's life. I also had to be absolutely certain about who was lying. Plus, I required proof to sue him because that guy is practically begging for a court case. So I decided to hunt down the astrologer. I believed that the best way to uncover the truth was to go directly to the person involved. After some investigation, I finally discovered his place of employment. I went there, and I want to be clear, I really went. I showed up. Believe me, I was not playing around. I demanded to know the truth, regardless of the consequences. Initially, when I challenged him, he pretended he didn't understand what I was talking about. He mumbled something about following the cosmos and astrological relationships. However, I warned him that I was this close to using one of those cosmic connections to choke him if he didn't spill the beans. I never actually planned to, but he didn't realize that, and as it turned out, it worked. He confessed. My brother had paid him to convince my former wife they were destined for each other. He claimed my brother offered him a sizable sum to make the deception believable, and since my ex-wife was really into astrology, he figured she would fall for it without hesitation. I asked whether my brother had threatened him or if it was solely a financial arrangement. I needed to understand the full extent of my brother's scheme to ruin my life. The astrologer confirmed there were no threats. My brother simply paid him to do it. Then he tried to defend accepting the money by saying he was in a tough financial spot, had a family to support, and that he used the money to purchase holiday presents for his children. It came off like a weak justification, though I didn't care because the true gift he provided was his full confession, which I recorded on my mobile phone. After that, the situation became even more chaotic. It seems that following my confrontation, the astrologer completely lost it and started blabbing to everyone. He informed his customers, acquaintances, and anyone who would listen about the events. He said my brother had essentially paid him to deceive my former spouse. He even began spreading the rumor that my brother had intimidated him, something I know to be untrue. I suppose he was simply trying to protect his own image by placing all responsibility on my brother. Then, a few days after my visit, my ex-wife discovered the reality. She was absolutely enraged, so she unleashed her anger on the astrologer, writing negative reviews on every online platform she could find. She revealed him as a fake and someone who could be easily swayed with money. When the astrologer saw what was unfolding, he attempted to portray himself as the victim. He asserted that he was just doing what he was told and that my brother had coerced him through intimidation. It's ironic because while the astrologer is about to get sued, he's also assisting me in completely destroying my brother's life. My brother is finally experiencing the repercussions of what he did, and I hope it's just the start. I'm scheduled to meet with my ex-wife tomorrow where I'll give her my reply, quoted, because I've known my answer for a while now. I was just waiting for the perfect time according to the stars to reveal it, which naturally meant keeping her waiting. Update 3, I've already met with my ex, and this post is here to share what took place at that meeting. However, before I go on, I feel the need to clarify a few of the comments I've received, which label me as the villain for making my former wife wait for my decision. Frankly, she wasn't high on my list of concerns. A woman who left me for my own brother because of some cosmic pronouncements doesn't warrant anything from me. As a matter of fact, I felt that agreeing to see her and give her an answer was more than she was due. Honestly, do you truly think the stars actually told her to leave me and that she just followed along without questioning it? The most probable situation, as I see it, is that she was already in love with him. No one just throws themselves into another man's arms based on some astrology reading, perhaps for something else, sure. And then, when she saw what my brother was really like, she cleverly played the victim with the astrologer. But let's face the truth. She chose to believe him to begin with because she had a need to believe it. If you sincerely think my ex-wife did all this solely because of the astrologer, then I expect you also believe in the tooth fairy and the boogeyman. Now let's get back to the more pressing issue, which was my meeting with my ex. We sat down in a coffee shop and she wanted to know if I'd figured out a way for us to be together again. I replied that no, I hadn't, as while journeying through the celestial sphere, I'd gotten off course. I then stated that a new star had warned me that rekindling our relationship would be a disaster, and that if I were to do so, a meteorite might hit me. You just can't dispute the universe, right? Thankfully, I had requested my coffee to be prepared to go, so after that, I offered her my best wishes and I left. I figured this absurd celestial drama was over, but she kept pursuing me. She mentioned I shouldn't fault her for being misled, and that since I'd once been open to marrying her and sharing my life, I ought to be able to rekindle those emotions. She kept talking, but eventually I interrupted and told her, listen, I'm not persuaded that your involvement with my brother only began after your astrologer's declaration. People don't usually start a relationship so quickly unless there was something already happening. And even if it's accurate, weren't your own astrological readings the ones that declared we were incompatible? But suddenly that's changed. She answered with something about cosmic alignments and how zodiac signs can evolve, implying we're now destined for each other. I gazed directly at her, feeling like I was looking at someone completely unhinged, then got into my vehicle and drove away. I'm unsure if she has tried to contact me because the first thing I did when I returned home was block her. I've provided her with all the information she could need. She can interpret them as she chooses. Now all I need to do is figure things out with my brother, who I'm still waiting for, and the astrologer, who will shortly be served with legal papers. This is update 4, and thanks to the heavens above, we have it because my brother finally cracked. Okay, perhaps not totally, but close enough. As you may recall, he was getting pummeled on social media after the astrologer elected to protect himself by publicly pointing the finger at him. Honestly, that turned out to be a positive outcome for me. I even contemplated not taking legal action against the astrologer since in a strange sense he was actually helping me out, but I've decided against it. I am in fact going to sue him. I'll get to the details later. As you might guess, my brother was livid with me. He went to speak with the astrologer, who revealed information about my visit. Now he believes it's my fault. The astrologer began publicly accusing him of intimidation. I said that wasn't my concern. Anything that occurred between him and the astrologer was his own affair. If he desired to have a relationship with him, that was perfectly fine, but I didn't want any of his astrological stuff coming anywhere near my home. I had no patience for that. I had in fact already consulted my horoscope that morning while sitting on the commode. Apparently he didn't appreciate that response. I'm not sure if it was my attitude or the fact that I didn't read his horoscope aloud. He informed me that this whole mess was impacting him financially and I needed to resolve it, or else. Or else what? I asked. Would he put a hex on me? Appeal to the heavens? Yes, I was purposefully being difficult, but he was the one who delivered the first threat and my doorbell camera captured all of it on video. He stated he planned to sue me for slander or some other absurd claim. I responded that this was just like him. He always depends on other people to fight his battles. He couldn't even get a woman to like him like any other man. He had to pay an astrologer to fabricate lies for him. That must have gotten to him because he threw a punch at me. I'm not sure if he saw spots since I never questioned him about it, but I definitely beat him up pretty badly. As he swung at me, I got behind him and held on. It seems those wrestling lessons I took in school really came in handy. After that, I pushed him out of my yard and kept kicking his rear end, actually. By the time we got to the sidewalk, I shoved him onto the concrete and told him not to come back. If he came back, I wouldn't just kick his behind. I could have done more damage, but I didn't want to land in any legal trouble. Plus, watching his ego crumble as people saw him sprawled on the ground was fulfilling enough. On a separate note, I'm taking legal action against the astrologer. His professional advice ruined a marriage, so I have a strong case. It's going to be a challenge getting the proof I need, but my ex-wife's reviews could actually work in my favor. We may even bring her in to give her account of things. I'm not sure if the stars have given her a heads up about that yet. I just wanted to share one last update. It's been about a year and 2 months since my last one, and so much has changed. I figured it would be good to give one final update now that everything is pretty much back to normal. To be honest, my life has gotten much better overall. My brother tried to sue me for assault, but the case was thrown out quickly, thanks to my video footage and his lack of any real proof. It was ridiculous. He basically hid behind the judge like he expected to be coddled. Even more ridiculous, the fact that he wasted his time with that garbage when he should have been focusing on keeping his job. He thought suing me would somehow make him look better, but instead, it totally backfired. He had also filed a lawsuit against the psychic, but since there was a financial aspect to it, that outcome didn't pan out as he'd hoped either. My folks got in touch with me. They phoned and said they were sorry for not backing me up when my former wife left. They conceded they had caused me pain by never making my brother take responsibility for his actions during our childhood. They sounded genuine, however, frankly, I wasn't interested. I'm not one who can easily let things go when people have wronged me. Regarding my ex-wife, she was subpoenaed to give evidence in the legal action against the psychic. I'm uncertain if she did it because she was compelled to or if she actually wanted to assist. However, either way, she was helpful. And the astrologer, he ended up losing the court case. And when I say lost, what I mean is he was forced to give me money. I don't know how much my brother originally gave him, but it feels like my brother, in a roundabout way, paid me. Of course, the money isn't technically from him, but that fact doesn't diminish my pleasure. I actually thought about getting those glow-in-the-dark stars for my bedroom ceiling, but then I remembered I don't like stars. On a brighter note, I've begun dating someone new. It's still relatively new, but I've found someone who is down to earth, holds values dear, values trust and communication, doesn't follow astrology, and doesn't dream of going to space anytime soon. That was all the reason I needed to ask her on a date. We are taking things at a leisurely pace, and I'm not pushing anything, yet it's a really nice feeling to be with someone I feel like I can really build a genuine connection with. My previous partner, I'm almost certain, once thought the moon was constructed from dairy products. Anyway, this entire experience has been an out-of-this-world adventure, although I've tried to deal with it in a lighthearted way. It certainly wasn't always simple, and I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me through this, particularly those who participated and offered jokes in the comment section so we could share a few laughs.